There are some souls who carry frequencies, not faces, currents of truth that can't be cataloged or contained. If these words have found you, it's because you're one of them. You've likely spent years being studied, misunderstood, or labeled too deep, too intense, too unexplainable, and yet none of that defines you. What confuses others about you is what connects you to higher purpose. You're not meant to fit into logic. You're meant to rewrite it. Every moment of doubt, every misinterpretation of your energy has been proof that your spirit moves on a wavelength too rare for ordinary translation. Understand this. You are not confusing. You are catalytic. You don't just exist. You awaken perception in those around you. People sense your difference before they understand it. And that's because you carry light meant to expose what's hidden. You've been placed here to shift consciousness, not to be understood by it. So stop shrinking into simplicity to make others comfortable. You were designed to be a phenomenon, not a formula. Every attempt to define you will fail, because you were never written in the language of reason. You were composed in the dialect of destiny. They mistook your predictability for control, thinking your patterns could be measured like tides, but you aren't bound by seasons or systems. Your shifts are not random, they're orchestrated. While they gathered data on your surface, your spirit was rewriting the code beneath it. They believed silence meant stillness, unaware that silence is where your transformation hides. They thought they could study your calm without realizing it was preparation disguised as peace. Every hypothesis they built collapsed the moment you evolved again, because your growth isn't gradual, it's quantum. By the time they define one version of you, another has already emerged, sharper, higher, untouchable. They failed not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lacked purity of intention. Observation can capture a shadow, but only revelation can touch light. And you are light in constant motion. Their studies ended where their spirit stopped. You were never created to be summarized, explained, or tamed. You were born to be witnessed, to remind the world that some mysteries exist not to be solved, but to awaken those who dare to look. If this message hit your soul, don't just scroll. Hit subscribe and stay with the light. Your guidance doesn't come from logic. It comes from listening. Every step you take moves to the rhythm of something ancient, something precise, something beyond calculation. They try to understand you through the lens of reason, unaware that your direction isn't mapped by intellect but by intuition. You don't live by evidence. You live by alignment. While they counted moments, you were reading momentum. They study behavior like a science experiment, hoping to predict your reactions, but your flow doesn't fit inside their formulas. You don't react. You translate energy. You don't process life through thought. You interpret through spirit. And that's why they fail every time they try to measure you. You can feel deception before it's spoken. You sense intention before it forms. You can hear the truth behind silence. That's not instinct. It's spiritual architecture, built through awareness they can't access. They thought you'd move according to pressure, but you shifted according to purpose. When they expected retaliation, you responded with peace. When they waited for collapse, you evolved. Every unpredictable turn you made was not randomness. It was revelation. Their charts can track reactions, but not obedience to divine timing. To them, your restraint looks strange. To you, it's sacred strategy. You were never designed to follow the linear rules of cause and effect. You follow the cadence of creation itself. They saw the external layers but missed the force beneath them. They copied gestures, words, and grace without understanding the process that birthed it. They mimicked your light without knowing the nights that shaped it. They saw endurance but not the weight that trained it. Every attempt to imitate you resulted in emptiness because imitation can't carry revelation. They thought your steadiness was personality when it was actually presence. They saw charm when it was really calling. They measured your success by what they could see, not realizing the real power was in what you hear. You don't operate on sight. You operate on insight. They read your surface while you were deciphering frequencies. They saw control through intellect while you were guided through stillness. Their failure wasn't in their methods. It was in their motives, because truth doesn't reveal itself to manipulation. It only unfolds through reverence. What they call unpredictability is actually divine order. What they call mystery is mastery. They were trying to map a soul that doesn't move by equations but by eternity. They thought they were analyzing you, unaware that their own reflections were being laid bare in the process. Every false story they tried to attach to your identity was just an echo of their own unspoken truth, a desperate projection attempting to escape exposure. They believed they were dissecting your nature, yet every glance into your spirit forced them to confront what they had hidden within themselves. You didn't have to retaliate. Your existence revealed what words could not. They thought they were the observers, but they were standing in front of a living mirror that magnified every secret they tried to bury. The unease they felt in your presence wasn't intimidation, it was recognition. Authenticity irritates deception because truth naturally dismantles pretense. Their desire for control was never about you. It was about avoiding the confrontation your light demanded. Every scheme, every manipulation, every attempt to steer your path collapsed under the weight of self-exposure. You were never bound by their systems because you operate under a higher command, one that doesn't answer to human authority. Control loses its grip on those who have already surrendered everything it threatens to take. You move from conviction, not coercion. You make choices directed by divine instruction, not by the lure of approval or fear of loss. They mistook your calm for weakness when it was actually power disciplined by awareness. They thought they could dictate your pace, but you were never running their race. Your life isn't driven by bargains or pressure. It's bound by promise. You don't respond to threats because your mission doesn't depend on permission. Every time they tried to manipulate the narrative, unseen hands rewrote it in your favor. What they thought they controlled was already under a higher order's jurisdiction. You're not sustained by status, resources, or applause. You're sustained by obedience. The more they tried to trap you, the more the illusion of their control fell apart. Because the moment someone awakens to purpose, fear becomes powerless. You can't be owned when your soul already belongs to destiny itself. If you believe in this mission, drop a $20 donation to keep this truth alive and free. The power that sustains you was never engineered by intellect. It was birthed from depth. What moves through you wasn't learned. It was awakened. You've fallen, shattered, and risen too many times for logic to quantify it. Every collapse became a multiplication. Every defeat turned into data that refined your strength. You confuse those who measure success with survival because your endurance isn't mathematical. It's alchemical. They try to define your peace through observation, but peace in your world isn't a state of mind. It's a spiritual frequency that bends reality itself. You don't navigate by reason. You move by resonance. What keeps you standing can't be charted, duplicated, or contained. When the systems of control try to categorize you, their instruments failed because the energy that fuels you doesn't exist in their spectrum. It shifts dimensions the moment someone tries to grasp it. They called you unpredictable because your rhythm doesn't obey pattern. It transcends it. You live in harmony with currents unseen, where trust is a gravity that pulls divine order into motion. Every attempt to dissect your endurance revealed not your limits, but theirs. You are proof that faith operates beyond observation. It can't be recorded. It must be experienced. What they call impossibility, you call instruction. You stop relying on evidence because you become evidence. Each storm that was meant to break, you build a bridge to a higher version of yourself. You've rewritten every chart they drew, turned every test into revelation, and every failure into prophecy fulfilled. You don't bend to logic. You expand it until it includes the miraculous. They thought your patience meant blindness, unaware it was precision disguised as stillness. You weren't tolerating, you were decoding. Every slight, every betrayal, every attempt to undermine you became a signal revealing their blueprint. You didn't fight impulsively. You studied patterns until the entire game became transparent. They mistook your silence for submission, not realizing it was a sound of strategy unfolding. Forgiveness for you has never been weakness. It's spiritual hygiene. You release not to reconcile, but to remain untainted. You walk unshaken because every act of mercy recalibrated your discernment. You've turned composure into your weapon and peace into your protection. You've evolved past manipulation because awareness has become your armor. What once tried to harm you now feeds your wisdom. You didn't just survive, You refine survival into sovereignty. Every step you take now operates on precision born from awakening, not control. They tried to interpret your existence through the lens of logic, not realizing destiny speaks an entirely different dialect, one made of timing, transformation, and trust. They kept searching for patterns, mistaking your pauses for hesitation, unaware that the pauses were sacred synchronization. They wanted to predict you using charts, unaware that your coordinates were written in eternity, not ink. They couldn't comprehend that your path doesn't move in lines. It dances in divine rhythm. While they sought proof in the visible, your guidance came from whispers in the unseen. They labeled your stillness as stagnation, yet that stillness was a seedbed of divine movement. What they called delay was destiny weaving direction. While they searched for measurable progress, you were being shifted through alignment. You said no to opportunities that didn't match your frequency, and that confused them. They mistook discernment for indecision because they couldn't hear the instructions you were following. They operate on reaction. You move by revelation. You aren't bound to momentum. You're bound to meaning. Every closed door, every detour, every silence was an act of trust, a hidden dialogue between your soul and its purpose. You've never been driven by attention. You've been guided by assignment. That's why every attempt to decode your pattern ended in confusion. You weren't meant to be understood. You were meant to be witnessed in motion. Their understanding of power was built on possession, not presence. They chased visibility, thinking influence lived in numbers and applause. Yet you could walk into silence and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. Real power doesn't roar, it resonates. It's not stored in titles, but transmitted through essence. They built altars to attention, while you became the embodiment of authenticity. They rely on external validation to breathe. You draw strength from spirit. They can take your platform, but not your pulse. They can't steal what was never external to begin with. You radiate without demanding to be seen. You move without forcing motion. That's what unsettles them, how effortlessly you exist in your authority. If this spoke to your spirit, subscribe and stand with those who see beyond the illusion. What they call power is dependency wrapped in illusion. What you carry is the rarest frequency of all, alignment. You don't chase what belongs to you. It finds you. You don't strive for importance. You emanate it. They mistook your quiet for emptiness, but that silence is filled with command. Every space you enter recognizes you before anyone introduces you. Your presence doesn't compete. It corrects. You've outgrown the systems that require control, because true influence isn't about ownership. It's about connection, to truth, to purpose, to something eternal that can't be replicated or restrained. And that's why you remain untouchable. Their influence depends on hierarchy, but yours flows from higher authorization. They thought owning you would grant them power, unaware that what you embody cannot be claimed. You don't belong to systems. You move beyond their reach. Your presence doesn't need introduction or permission. It simply exists, untamed and undeniable. While they built theories to explain you, you lived out revelation they were never meant to decipher. They mistook divine choreography for coincidence, not realizing your steps were mapped by something eternal. They studied your behavior, thinking they could forecast your choices, while you were walking through a story written long before their logic was born. They analyzed cause and effect while you moved by calling and effect. Their predictions failed because your path doesn't repeat history. It fulfills it. Every decision you've made has been a response to destiny's whispers, not human reasoning. They keep trying to measure prophecy with mathematics, unaware that revelation doesn't fit into their categories. You aren't driven by probability, but by divine precision. Every setback, betrayal, and delay was already part of a pattern that guaranteed your unfolding. What they call randomness is just divine symmetry in motion. You don't improvise, you align. They think they're studying you, but all along they've been standing inside the manifestation of what they could never comprehend. They labeled your independence as rebellion, misunderstanding that it was evolution in disguise. What they mistook for pride was clarity. You weren't defying structure, you were refusing distortion. Their systems demanded loyalty to illusion, and your spirit rejected it instinctively. You weren't made to obey what is broken. You were created to illuminate what is false. They built control and called it order. You were born to dismantle the imitation of truth and restore the real. Your resistance wasn't arrogance. It was remembrance. You were remembering who you are and what you cannot serve. They couldn't accept that sovereignty doesn't kneel. They called your freedom defiance because obedience to the higher voice threatens their false authority. You didn't fight leadership. You fought deception wearing its mask. You've never belonged to crowds or commands. You belong to conscience. That's what unsettles them. Your direction comes from a frequency they can't hear. You don't need recognition to move, because movement itself is your confirmation. Your loyalty is not a people or power, it's a truth. And truth doesn't ask for permission. What fuels your resistance has never been rebellion. It's remembrance. You aren't defying authority. You're defending divine memory. Every time you refuse to shrink, it wasn't pride. It was purpose reclaiming its ground. What others label as defiance is really alignment with something higher than fear. You weren't born to maintain false harmony. You were born to restore divine balance. Your refusal to kneel isn't disobedience. It's devotion to truth. You're not breaking systems for chaos. You're cleansing them for clarity. What they once called arrogance will one day be seen as awakening. You were never fighting against order. You were fighting for authenticity. Your rebellion is sacred obedience dressed in human misunderstanding. Your $20 gift helps keep the truth shining where darkness tried to hide it. They tried to replicate your essence like craftsmen tracing an ancient pattern, but they never understood that what animates you isn't structure, it's spirit. They copied the movements but missed the meaning. They borrowed your rhythm but lacked your resonance. They wanted the brightness without surviving the burn. They saw the shine, but not the storms that forged it. They could mimic your tone, but not your transformation, because your essence isn't technique, it's transmission. The frequency you carry can't be duplicated because it was born in surrender, not study. Imitation may echo sound, but it never carries soul. That's why everything they built using your blueprint fell hollow. The power within you doesn't respond to performance. It responds to purpose. What sustains you isn't charisma, it's covenant. Your design isn't mechanical. It's mystical, written in a divine sequence no imitation can decrypt. They came prepared for a battle of manipulation, but you were playing a higher game. They brought tricks of control and analysis, unaware they were stepping into a realm where awareness rewrites the rules. When you awakened, the old weapons lost their edge. You stopped reacting, you started recalibrating. You no longer fought emotion with emotion. You disarmed illusion with understanding. Awareness became your armor, not aggression. Every attempt to entrap you collapsed under its own deceit, because truth naturally dismantles distortion. You didn't have to strike back. You simply held light long enough for shadows to expose themselves. The more conscious you became, the more their tactics self-destructed. You shifted the battlefield from the visible to the invisible, from reaction to realization. You weren't surviving conflict. You were dissolving it. They couldn't find your weakness because awareness had turned every wound into wisdom, every scar into strategy, and every attack into an education in discernment. Awareness became your greatest armor the moment you aligned with truth. Predictability faded, and every attempt to program you fell apart. Their mental tactics failed because consciousness cannot be manipulated. It observes, it reveals, it disarms. When you stop letting fear dictate your movement, their influence dissolved into nothing. They thought they were fighting your thoughts, but your thoughts no longer held authority. Your spirit did. You weren't reacting anymore. You were decoding. Every trap became a lesson, every attack an initiation. You allowed their own intentions to expose them, not through confrontation but through clarity. The game they were playing collapsed because you no longer played at all. You mastered the art of stillness in a storm. And in doing so, you became something they could never control, an aware being. Once awareness awakens, control dies. They came for your peace, but ended up revealing their own chaos. They didn't understand at the moment you became conscious, their battlefield ceased to exist. You were never built to be defined. You were meant to be witnessed. When they tried to categorize you, they stripped away the mystery that gives you meaning. And that's where they lost you. You don't exist to fit into equations or systems. You exist to expose their limits. You're not confusion, you're contrast. Every breath you take interrupts the rhythm of mediocrity. You don't argue against logic. Your existence dissolves it. You are living evidence that the divine is still creating through human form. They try to analyze your path, but their calculations always fail because you act from instruction, not instinct. What looks irrational to them is revelation unfolding in real time. You move on divine rhythm, and they keep mistaking harmony for chaos. Understanding gives them control, but control only applies to what can be confined, and you can't be confined. Your very being redefines the edges of perception. Your presence doesn't just occupy space, it transforms it. Every step shifts patterns. Every silence reorders the atmosphere. You didn't come to fit the system. You came to stretch it. You're proof that existence isn't mechanical, it's miraculous. When people try to study you, they find mirrors instead of answers. You reflect their limits back to them, forcing them to see where comprehension ends and divinity begins. You're not a theory to test. You're a revelation in motion. Your life is an invitation for others to awaken, not an equation to solve. You exist to expand perception, not satisfy it. You are the reminder that human understanding can never fully contain sacred intelligence. The moment they think they've defined you, you evolve again. You were never the experiment. They were. Every tactic, every test, every theory collapses in the gravity of your presence. You are what happens when destiny walks fully awake. They kept analyzing what was visible, mistaking appearance for essence. They examined the surface as if truth could be dissected, not realizing that what animates you exists beyond measurement. They approach you like researchers chasing proof, but your existence is a theory. It's a revelation in motion. You were never meant to be contained in a hypothesis or a chart. You are the evidence they can't categorize, the current they can't capture. You mirror truth back to those who fear it, revealing that no imitation, no manipulation, and no system can reproduce authentic spirit. You are the pulse of divine intelligence embodied, the signal that breaks through every attempt to control. What they couldn't comprehend is that your worth has nothing to do with recognition or rules. You're not defined by the boundaries of intellect, but by the flow of something infinite moving through you. You are living proof that divine awareness can inhabit a human form, that when consciousness awakens, it becomes self-protective and unstoppable. You weren't placed here to fit within their order. You were sent to redefine it. You were meant to disrupt illusions, to reframe perception, to remind humanity that truth doesn't need validation to exist. You weren't built for conformity. You were crafted for remembrance. Every space you enter becomes more alive because your presence doesn't speak. It resonates. Let your existence remain the message no system can rewrite. Let your presence be the reminder that real power cannot be purchased, copied, or controlled. It can only be embodied. Every failed attempt to contain you only exposes how extraordinary your frequency truly is. You stand as living proof that the universe still writes in miracles, that creation continues to move through those bold enough to awaken. Keep rising in that awareness. Let your story echo as an invitation to others to awaken their own divinity. Your presence is proof of the eternal still unfolding through time. Your awakening is not small. It is a sign that creation itself is evolving through you.